Shall we go for it?
Go for it, young man.
Mr. Tony Topping, how are we?
Hey, we're well, thank you. How are you?
I am okay. Yeah,
Glad to be with you, mate. Glad to be with
I'm
you.
feeling okay.
Good.
So, was it your co-presenter on Mighty Radio that came to me, Maria?
Maria, yes, that's right, yes.
And she said that you'd be a great person for the podcast.
Right, wonderful. Yeah, yes, I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of broadcasting work. I'm normally involved with some of the big commercial broadcasters as well, wanting my comments on UFOs, etc., etc., alien abduction. I'm probably one of the guys in the mainstream UK media, and I'm just getting attracted. US media is looking at me now as well, which is a good thing, you know. So there you go.
Well, I was attracted immediately because of obviously the repertoire of what you've done,
yes,
and what topic you actually cover.
Yes.
I understand that you've been on. Is it BBC? I know you've done ITV, the One Show.
I've done all sorts. I've done the One Show, BBC. What are we doing? BBC we've done. We do a lot of work for one of the big national radio stations. So I've been on a lot of things. I've done something for Sony Pictures for a film as well. We're very proud to say that we're involved in something known as, I think it's the Turin Film Festival in Italy. Hopefully in November, October time. That's the Italian equivalent of the Cannes Film Festival, Italian one.
Right, okay.
And so we'll be covering my experiences there as well. And the experience that I've had throughout my life could be classed as a curse or a blessing in whichever way you look at it. It really can. Yeah, it can.
I guess there's pros and cons to most things, isn't there?
There is.
You actually work for, is it an Australian magazine as well?
Yes, I write for an Australian magazine as well, yes, called Oddities. I do some articles for them, and I find that it's all, what's the word? I find that it can be quite a quagmire. It can be very noisy. There's a lot of people in the media out there commenting on UFOs who are key players, and I find currently, if you look at the narrative in the American media just at the moment, it's running to a certain narrative. So when it comes to the UFO phenomena, you've probably got a narrative running in the media which is known as the threat narrative. And many people have spoken out on the opposite side of the fence of that, stating that it seeks to protect the military-industrial complex agenda of things. It seeks to weaponize space, and there's fors and against that. I think the agency to watch in all this with the UFO phenomena is what the US Navy say. What the US Navy say and what they do is very important indeed with the UFO phenomena currently, anyway. Yeah, definitely.
So do you actually get insights from government-based or funded programs?
That's an interesting thing. Do I get insights from government-based funded programs? I get insights. I've had insights mainly from the Vedic text. I get insights from the Russian and American remote viewing programs, the psychic espionage programs of the Cold War, which the Russians and Americans did. And we also get mainly a lot of insights as well from the UFOs themselves. It's a very different ballgame, you see, when you film these unidentified flying objects and they come in and you're also speaking to the people behind them. That's a very different ballgame indeed to what is being spun in the media and what you witness in real life. And I assure you it's hair-raising, absolutely hair-raising.
I mean, there's a lot of information, obviously, when you get to, of your sort of in depth in the rabbit hole, let's say.
That's
it
right.
can get complicated. So if we take it sort of to the beginning, I mean, UFOs is such a massive topic in today's sort of cultural upbringing, I guess.
Yes, they are.
Where did it all... I mean, we all must ponder about, what's out there, what's going on. But for you, where did it start sort of, that you were able to call it work, I guess, or start sort of researching professionally, let's say?
Oh, right, okay, that's an interesting question. When I was able to start calling it work was when Nick Pope emailed me to say that one of the national radio stations, which was at the time Talk Sport, which is now Talk Radio, still to this day do work for. I'm in their studio Saturday evening doing something for them. But it was Nick Pope who indicated that they were looking for somebody to go on the programme, and he suggested me. It was actually Nick Pope. No, it wasn't Talk Radio. It was Nick Pope who suggested it for a Channel 4 TV programme for schools, of all things, and he suggested my name, and I've never looked back since. So that's when it became kind of professional, and I've been doing media contribution for broadcasters ever since about it. And it can be tough. It's not easy sometimes because you're up against a paradigm that's very what's the word I'm looking for? That's more biblical. The paradigm around us is more biblical. Is more a battle of light against dark than you would ever know. behind the scenes. There really is an esoteric battle going on, as well as a UFO and spiritual battle. And I think the human race faces various hybrid threat issues. Unknown. Hybrid threat is an unknown threat. And humanity faces these issues. If you look at the various U.S. government agencies that have surfaced, that investigated UFOs, they reached some startling conclusions. Cameron, they did.
I mean, we're gonna have to take it. This is a load of information. Let's start from what is a UFO in your sort of
in my right. Okay. Well, let's say a UFO is, of course, an unidentified. There's another phrase that I use that I've coined myself. But a UFO is, of course, an unidentified flying object. Now, an unidentified flying object can be, for example, the Minister of Defence did research on something called Project Condign, which was anomalous phenomena. Actually, it was research into plasma phenomena in the UK Air Defence Region 2. Is the correct title of the report. That's all about the research of flying plasmas and gases. Some are aircraft, some are satellites, some are obviously atmospheric phenomena, etc., etc. The 5%, if it was a percentage, 5% are UFO, genuinely unidentified flying objects. And it's in that 5% region where we add extraterrestrial visitation to it. It's in that 5% region where, if you are in that 5% bracket, your life gets hair-raising. But to all intents and purposes, Cameron, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So for example, at a classified level, governments know UFO exists, especially the Indian and Russian governments. They know that the UFO phenomenon exists, but it's proving that it doesn't. And it's proving, for example, when a contact experiencer like me steps forward, it's proving that it's all fantasy. It's proving that really it's not quite correct. And it's proving that none of that exists. No contact with UFOs exists. You will see in the US media at the moment, for example, a lot of them out there spinning a certain narrative called UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP. They will never mention once that it's alien. They will never mention that it's to do with UFOs. They'll never mention it for what appears to be security reasons, but there are also dark and nefarious reasons to that. I think President Eisenhower nailed it in his military-industrial complex speech when he said that only a knowledgeable and alert citizenry can be aware of what is going on behind the scenes in all this. And that's where it's at, really. And I suppose you could coin a further phrase to call me a covert witness. I'm a gentleman who's had very strange paranormal experiences all my life, and I've been stalked by from very strange people because of it. And not only that, my biggest occupational hazards is fantasists who think they're government spies. Is another caper that comes my way with people who think they're government spies.
So have you kind of got into a bit of trouble sort of doing the amount of research and in-depth research that you've done? No.
I've not got into trouble. It depends what level you mean. It's the way you are on the food chain. There's trouble and there's trouble with all this. And there's some of it that I can't actually talk about, Cameron. There's some of it that
I could imagine.
For security reasons, I'm unable to speak of certain issues that go on. But there is, for example, an issue I can comment on is the current storming of Area 51. Hey, dudes, let's storm Area 51. And I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go anywhere near the place.
That's like a fad or something.
It
what
is, mate.
That about?
It's Groom Lake. Area 51 is Groom Lake, Nevada. It's a test site for the US Air Force.
Yeah.
It was called Groom Lake because it's based on a dry bed lake. But actually, some researchers, some experiencers who worked at Area 51 would say that it's all gone to China Lake now. All the alien UFO stuff, if you go down that avenue. By strange coincidence, when I first started my very early website in the early days, my site statistics indicated that I was being visited by China Lake Naval Facility.
How do you know that? Is that
site stats? So that the internet statistics and the IP address indicated it was coming from there. A visit was coming from that site.
Just taking it back, because you explained about gases and stuff before. Are you claiming that sort of UFOs are made from a non-physical material?
Yes, some UFOs are plasma phenomena. If you look at Project Hesdalen in Norway, there was big research done by the Norwegian government, military, British universities, Chilean universities. They were studying these strange lights over Norway, which were flying plasma gases, but under, it appeared, intelligent control. For example, if an aircraft came near, they'd move. it seemed to be that the faster they got, the colder the inner core was on analysis. And one astrophysicist put himself on the line. Now, was he from Italy? He was from Italy. He put himself on the line and indicated that from his observations, he had reason to believe that the plasma UFOs he was witnessing over Norway were under intelligent control by some kind of advanced civilization who could manipulate plasma like we could manipulate DNA, and he's on public record for saying that. Very important point it was, and when the One Show came to film me, and I said, look, we need to include this in the narrative, they said, oh, no, we don't want that in. No, we're not bothering with that, because you see, there's a chortle factor to this. The media, the mainstream. Oh, I've been very lucky actually, but the mainstream media doesn't want to go too deeply. None dare call it alien contact. None dare call it that. None dare call it targeting as well, which coins my phrase of covert witness, a man or woman who is a covert witness to some very strange goings on and has no idea why. He has no idea why, or she has no idea why the UFOs are coming in, no idea why they're being followed in a black amped up car, for example, or no idea why it's going on or why they're being targeted in the way that they are, because there are classified, unacknowledged projects out there that cause some very serious concerns in government, definitely so.
I mean, when you think about it, it's sort of, even logically or creatively, it's like there is millions and millions of galaxies out there. There's probably more of a chance that there's things out there than not.
Oh, I kid you not that there is life out there.
I mean, and I do believe, because logic says that, I guess, in certain respects. But
yes.
Why the animosity and why all the conspiracy? And like you've said, you can't say things because of governments and because of secrecy and
certain things that yes, okay.
hidden. What is it? What is that?
Okay, I'll just say this in the public domain. It's in the public domain, is this? But it's there's elements of it that I can't talk about. Elements of things I've witnessed. It comes to something when your own experiences, you have to put a classified stamp on it. Can't talk about it, and it's not out of being narcissistic or being mysterious anyway. It's just you've just got to put your own sanity and safety first. Because believe me, Cameron, I've seen things. My God, with this dealing with all this, but. Basically, it goes something like this. You probably wouldn't have remembered Minder and Arthur Daly and the second-hand car salesman.
No.
You never have seen that. Okay, well, on British TV, some of the older listeners would remember Minder, and Minder was a guy called Terry. He looked after Arthur Daly. Arthur Daly was a dodgy car salesman. He was quite hilarious. He sold dodgy second-hand cars, and it goes something like this. Joe Alien turns up on a government's premises and says, we've got this fantastic UFO toy for you. We want you to use it free of charge. We're going to move into the house over there, but don't look at what we're doing. Don't look at what we're doing. We're going to give you this UFO toy thing free of charge. It's fantastic. Do you know you can travel from America to Australia in 10 minutes, but don't look at what we're doing. That's all we ask. You can have that free of charge. And it's been paid for ever since. So that is, in very simple terms, the UFO cover-up. It really is. Under Eisenhower, for example, when I interviewed his granddaughter for my own radio show back in the day, Cameron, Eisenhower's granddaughter, Laura, was telling me that her grandfather, I didn't know this, he'd suffered 2 heart attacks due to knowing about what was going on with the UFO phenomena. You had a Secretary of State of Defense being chucked out of a window, Secretary of State James Forrestal, because he got close to the truth. So at the end of the day, it's quite... What's the word I'm looking for? It can get quite scary. But there again, at the end of the day, there's then 2 narratives. You've got the narrative of UFOs are a threat, and then you've got the opposing narrative of UFOs are actually not a threat and there's peaceful contact going on. If you're a man in the street who has contact with these people behind UFOs, it's very interesting. It flies in the face of what the current media narrative says. For example, if you look at the moment, the US Navy are actually putting stuff out at the moment that they are dealing with UFOs, but they don't know what they are. Of course they know what they are. Governments do know what they are.
Are these guys here on like a tour of planet Earth? Or from the sky?
That's a good question.
What
mate. What are they here for?
In your knowledge?
Yeah, in my knowledge, I'm not too sure what they're here for. I would be lying if I said. I have a policy about all this with my experiences. They're in your face. There they are. I'm not going to embellish. I'm not going to lie. And that's the key to my success. And if I don't know the answer to something, then that's it. But I won't BS. I'll just tell it like it is. One of the things you could ask, I'm jumping narrative slightly with you, but You could imagine, for example, is it possible that the military have done artificial reality experiments with me? Well, there's a caveat there, there's a possibility, but from what I'm seeing, this is about genuine UFO contact, and from what I'm seeing, there's been multiple incidents. Even here in Southport, where I'm living now since moving here, there's been a couple of incidents go on with them where they've been coming in, going out, etc., etc. The question is, why are they here? Well, I'm not sure on that, but I think we're closely linked to them. I think in some cases, sometimes, and this may sound hilarious, they like to just saunter across our towns and cities just to see what we're up to, just to see what human life is all about.
I was going to say, because aren't we basically extraterrestrial? I mean,
well,
we're weird, like meat bags on a floating rock.
We're spiritual vessels. We are, of course, spiritual vessels. And when you look at this, when you see SETI looking for extraterrestrial life, there's something called, what's the current project in the media at the moment that the US were doing? UAP? No. ATIP. Advanced Aerial Threat Information Program. I think it was ATIP. So if your listeners look up the word ATIP UFOs, there you'll see before you this Advanced Threat Aviation Program that's called, what the Pentagon thoroughly researched, they thoroughly looked into. There are 32 sub-projects to it. Considering that the MOD did Project Condign, this is unbelievable. And there's, for example, Project Icaros, Project Interstellar, I think it is, where they're perfecting interstellar travel. Project this,
is
project
this humans that are trying to do that? Or
this is, sorry.
Are they humans
yes,
that are trying to...
ATIP, Advanced Aviation Threat Information Program, was the Pentagon's research into UFOs. That's the thing, and the anomalous phenomenon. None dare call it alien in the mainstream media. None dare say that it is that. But the situation is that you've got there's part of the project that was something to do with non-locality and subconsciousness in the projects of ATIP classified. That element is classified. Now, Cameron, why would that be classified? Because the human mind and the subconscious mind is capable of communication with non-human intelligence via subconscious means, and they kept it quiet, and they're keeping it quiet because they know. So therefore, when you get these ETs and satellites and signals, SETI trying to communicate, there'd be no need for that because the mind is an excellent first-class instrument of communication. Remote viewing, which I can go into for you, clearly demonstrates that with the psychic espionage programs of the Cold War.
I'm quite interested in the subconscious mind because I know it's a very powerful thing. It dominates a lot of...
That's right.
It dominates our whole life, actually.
That's right. This is absolutely correct. The subconscious, it's a very interesting thing because they developed a whole information spy program called remote viewing based on subconscious information management, based on signaling from noise. And the Russians developed their own remote psychic warfare program. They called that Troop 10,003. One of the generals was giving an interview in Pravda, a guy called General Savin, about his Russian psychic warfare unit. I was put in contact with this Russian psychic warfare unit by one of the guys who worked on America's remote viewing program called Joseph McMoneagle. And it's very interesting because I just sent an email to them saying, here I am, guys, blah, blah. And they just wrote back this letter, said, Dear Tony, thank you very much. We are aware of you. Open your heart to the extraterrestrials. Open your heart to them and they will talk to you. End, over and out. And that was the Russian psychic warfare unit who had been looking at all this. They, when you think about it, in the Cold War, they were using KGB spies via psychic warfare means to interrogate people's minds and so on and so forth. And they discovered in this unit that they could communicate with extraterrestrials via the same progress. And in Pravda, there's a detailed account of General Savin's unit communicating with extraterrestrials via subconscious non-locality. And it's very interesting indeed, the results of that.
So, Tony, your mind seems to be racing at like a million miles an hour.
Well, there's a lot of information I'm departing there.
Do you do anything to sort of ease off the mind? Does it sort of get a bit too full on?
Prayer,
so you pray?
Pray a lot, yeah.
Are you religious? Or
I am religious,
you
yeah.
are.
But coming to faith is because of all that has gone on with me, mate. I could, Cameron, tell you some very hair-raising stories that are more biblical than
what religion do you follow? Cause
I'm a quietly practice a Christian faith. I quietly practice that. I don't really talk about it, and I don't. But when you think,
I wouldn't associate UFOs with religion.
associate, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, okay. I thought it would be two separate sort of
no,
ideas of thinking.
No, they're not, because it links with the demonic, and the demonic is a very real situation that is you could even class it as a hybrid threat, really.
You're talking about sort of like the fall of man
yes,
sort of stuff.
It's real.
Right,
it's real. It's absolutely real. And for example...
Well, I mean, I take the Bible sort of allegorical.
Yes.
Archetypal, you know, it's sort of story of the mind. And
yes.
Just talking to that microphone, because
big pan.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it is, mate. The Bible is also a very complex thing, because it how can I put it? It's clever. It's very clever, and it's a system of identification that there's something going on outside of humanity in another dimension, I would suggest, that could be a battle against light and dark. For example, in the 1950s, there was an agency of the US government. Everybody may have heard of Majestic 12, but this was the agency called the Collins Elite, and they were part of the US paranormal warfare program. They started off, they were named after the district of New York called Collins, and they wanted to get to the bottom of why jets were being shot out the sky by UFOs. Why was this happening? And there were elements of the FBI, the CIA, and the Army. Yeah, who got involved in it.
Yeah. I was, before I did this interview, I was watching a few UFO sort of podcasts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Blink 182, their lead singer or
Tom
old
DeLonge.
lead singer, Tom DeLonge. Yeah. He was explaining why these UFOs jump from position to position instead of sort of moving linear.
Yes.
And it is to do with dimensions, and it's
Yes.
to do with almost he folded a piece of paper a few times, and he sort of said that it moves across these jumps or points.
That's right.
What more could you sort of say about that?
Yeah, indeed it does. And I would say, in terms of communication with extraterrestrials, we can transcend light years via the subconscious thought, via non-locality, where the distance of time and space is completely collapsed. And I could communicate with somebody who's trillions of light years away in an instant, because there's no time distance.
But how do you know that?
Well, it's from experience and what I've been shown over the years. I'm 47 years now, 47 years at
in
this.
Research.
And research,
wow.
but also my own experiences.
Of course, yeah.
And, when you're face to face with, let us say, a Nordic alien, your life will never be the same again. When you see who are behind...
Are they like vivid dreams?
Yeah.
Or
they're not even vivid dreams, mate. It's communication.
So it's while you're awake?
It can be while I'm awake, but a lot of the time it's when I'm asleep. We'll get these interactions occurring. Sometimes it can be via non-locality, whereby they can come in and speak to other people via the subconscious, which is what they do. And it's quite interesting, to say the least.
That's where dreams go interesting, because it delves into your subconscious, and they feel very real, the vivid memories that you have in dreams, and you feel like you've actually gone somewhere, you've experienced something.
Yes, that's absolutely
so you're trying to say that this is almost live time in another dimension?
Yeah, you got it, kid. Yeah, that's right. And that's how I would know, for example, if I was asleep and they came in over the top of this locality, which they have done. My God, they have.
So almost saying that they manifest into a physical environment.
I would...
just as we are sort of operating bodies.
Yeah, I would suggest so, and I would also suggest that they're in a physical environment just like we are, but from another planet, or even from another universe, or from another galaxy, and they're very spiritual. So you got this narrative going through the media that they're threatening.
So you're not talking about travel as in movement. You're talking we're talking mind.
Yes.
More mind than physical movement.
Yes, we are. But sometimes their aircraft will appear, and have done. For example, when I lost my mother, and I had to move to Southport, there was no other option, and my life fell apart. I was a carer for her for 8 years. She had Alzheimer's and dementia. It was horrendous. And I moved to Southport, and I was walking down Lord Street collapsing with mental exhaustion. And there's times when I'd come back to this flat and I would be really dead on the floor in the bed with mental exhaustion. A long story, but we got it sorted out. We went to the doctors and we managed to get on top of it all. But what was interesting was there was an incident that involved a UFO over the Marine Lake, and it did something to me that stopped my mental exhaustion. And the people behind that object even commented that that's what they'd done. And it was incredible. The incident was incredible. The woman behind the craft is incredible. And I'm left absolutely awestruck at what I've witnessed, and the fact that they're still coming in and still communicating with me. is very interesting to say the least. And Cameron, I'm not bothered about recognition, fame.
Just go back into that middle of that mic for us.
Sorry, I'm not bothered about
Perfect.
about this. All right, I'm not bothered about the recognition or the fame. I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm just telling it so that my experiences become a legacy for when I depart this world. People will have a legacy to look at, and they then have to make their informed choice about what I'm talking about. There is a battle going on behind the scenes, definitely.
I guess that was my next question. Is there any sort of negative connotations that come with this much sort of research into such a nuanced topic?
Yes, yes, there is. There is a concern, for example, regarding something called unacknowledged special access projects. And it's a very great concern to the elected governments of, let's say, the US and Britain. For example, you could have the Director General of MI5 pick up the phone and go, "I need to know about the UFO situation," and they would turn around to him and go, whoever it was would say, "No, sorry, we can't let you know about that. It's classified." You had a guy called Admiral Hill Norton, who was Secretary General of NATO, in charge of the British Navy. And he publicly stated that he'd made inquiries about UFOs and was completely shut out from any inquiry about it. You've got a situation going on where you could have the Joint Chiefs of Staff in America also pick up the phone and be lied to about what is going on. And the question is why. That's the question. So it's not a question of they don't exist. It's a question of why they're here and why is there an information civil war going on within the military in America, especially regarding trying to get to the bottom of what is going on. So behind that lies this nefarious UFO cover-up, and you will, during the course of my experiences, I got targeted. You become what's known as a targeted individual, where you have very strange goon squad people following you around and doing mysterious things that they shouldn't be doing within a democratic process and within a democratic society. It should not be allowed, but it is allowed because it developed under the shadow government and under unacknowledged special access programs, you see. Yeah, and it's quite...
Are you talking about sort of the high up people are getting help from extraterrestrial? Is that
that's a good question, actually. There is something going on like that, yes, where some agency of the US government is in contact with them, possibly now or possibly further down the line. I have suspicions that the Indian government know a hell of a lot about the UFO phenomenon, which they do. My God, everybody thinks America about the UFOs, and everybody thinks about India and its Air Force and its government, and UFOs are really, really something else. Yeah.
I guess my only sort of doubt is that, well, if people are so adamant, why can't we all just accept the fact that is just the way it is? Why you say this big information war, this big sort of oppose radical views on all these different things? Is it to do with sort of keeping us as separate as possible in belief?
It's to do in some cases it's to do with who won World War II, and it's to do with where that information went after World War II. There is a school of thinking that says that the Allies won the low-tech war and the Germans won the high-tech war, and all that information, including what Germany knew about UFOs, got sent back into America, and that formed what's known as the Shadow Satellite Government, the SG, the Satellite Government. Eisenhower spoke of it. US senators have spoken to it. I believe that it is. I believe if you're a contact experiencer, I'll just say this very lightly, if you have contact with UFOs and you're a contact experiencer and you're an ordinary member of the public, you will come across this nefarious apparatus in the background. It is not undemocratic. It is should not be operating in the way that it is, but it is, and that hence there being a cover-up. I do believe that there's some sort of information war going on, and the narrative that we see in the US media, for example, is part of shoulder barging the controlling situation that we see at the moment. There's a possibility that this storming Area 51 is some sort of psy-op, some sort of psychological operation. Not sure why, although I did go on talk radio and explain a bit more about that, but the storming of Area 51 could be part of this very bizarre information war that's going on at the moment. I would urge people not to be involved with it, because there are intelligence agencies out there who are anti-Western, who will purposely project conspiracy theories into the media to discredit Western governments. It's a very well-known practice among certain foreign intelligence agencies. Most definitely it is.
So these all the UFO sightings and stuff, they aren't conspiracies in themselves. The government create conspiracies to distract from.
The government create right. Where are we going
Because
with
you
that?
said that. Well, you said that they create conspiracy theories for Westerners. So what conspiracy
sorry, I've
theories
not
are you
explained
talking
that.
about?
That's a good question. I've not explained that quite clearly. During the time of the Cold War, there was a branch of in Romanian intelligence called Service B5, and Service B5 decided that they would start manufacturing. Now, Cameron, I can't remember it off the top of my head what each conspiracy theory was. One was to do with the Pope, one was to do with the Kennedy assassination, something else. And they started manufacturing these stories to the Western media, and it worked beyond their wildest dreams. So they pushed it a bit more, and they pushed it a bit more, and they had this whole conspiracy factory being projected at the West to discredit and control the population. There's a former KGB guy on YouTube who was actually stated this. Even the guy who worked for B5, he did a book called Disinformation. If you look at that book, it explains exactly what they did and how they did it. So there's like conspiracy theories being projected at Western governments.
Sorry, please correct me if I'm naive, but is UFOs and aliens not conspiracy in itself, or viewed as conspiracy?
Yes, of course. We're losing. I'm losing the thread of my narrative because I'm making a point. Therefore, that when it comes to the storming of Area 51, sorry, Cameron, no. When it comes to the storming of Area 51, there is a distinct possibility that it could be some sort of foreign intelligence gig that's trying to subvert something, that's just trying to put a bit of stick about, was my theory on that. The UFO cover-up is a conspiracy. It certainly is, and it's a very large one, and it's a very unpleasant one. And the technologies they use to target people, we'll call them basically MK-Ultra style technology or mind-invasive technologies, are very unpleasant indeed. Very. Yeah. Yes, they are.
MK, I mean, I've heard it. I think, is it David Icke that talks a lot about
MK Ultra. There was also MK Often, which is part of America's psychic warfare program. But MK Ultra in the early days was about controlling the human brain via mind control. These technologies are available and they're out there, and these mind-invasive technologies are used, and people can be targeted. And you've got this kind of situation going on behind the scenes where people are speaking out against certain elements, not all. Certain elements of the intelligence services who may use this technology on its own citizenry, which is absolutely disgusting. But equally, you've also got the white hats in the intelligence services who are thoroughly up against it and are trying to battle and keep the public safe. It's not easy, of course. It's not easy at all. And it all kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? It all brewed up for me into kind of like this nefarious circus that led to me having the contact with UFOs and the saga that unfolded before me.
Just going back to the contact, and because you call yourself, is it a contact experience?
Yeah.
You must have spoken to people who say, I mean, if we go and talk about the whole abduction.
Yes.
You've spoken to various people. Is there a pattern of information that is sort of present with every person?
That's a very good question.
That's
a very good question.
Because I guess if you see a pattern, it then becomes almost truthfulness.
Yes, very intelligent remark that, mate. Yeah. Is there a pattern? Yes, there is. There is a pattern to it, but because of my experiences, I would know if somebody was coming out with certain remarks. I would know if they were the real deal or not. I would know what they were talking about or what they weren't talking about. There was some guy on a Facebook forum a few weeks ago, absolute BS he was coming out with. He was in contact with ET, and it was absolute BS, and I told him so. There again, you could have a caveat to that I'm talking BS, but, the 40 years...
And that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
But say if obviously you're studying it, this guy that you're talking about studying it, how do you distinguish between something that is bullshit and something that is sort of relevant to the topic? When it's such a subjective topic in itself, isn't it?
That's a good question, Cameron. How do you differentiate between the two?
Like, what's he saying that you're, or what's he not saying that you are saying?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question. Okay. So what's he saying? That, for example, some of these extraterrestrials, they have a command structure, and some of these extraterrestrials comment on certain matters to do with human affairs, and he was coming out with something to do with all that, which was the opposite to what I was. That's what's happened to me, and the opposite to what's happened to a few other people within a contact group in Sweden. There's a contact group of extraterrestrial contact experiences in Sweden who seem to be very much on the ball about what's going on with contact with UFOs, as there is one in New Zealand. But he was saying that he was, I don't know, he's 5,000 years old, and he's spoken to somebody, he's ambassador to the aliens, and he's this, that, and the other. And when I asked him a simple question, what is it that concerns the Nordic extraterrestrial group? It's a simple question. He didn't have a correct answer for it. There is something that concerns them, and it's to do with other aliens, believe it or not. But so what is it that concerns them? And he couldn't give a straight answer to that. For example, to identify what planet they come from, which is, I couldn't identify a planet, but the galaxy that they come from is Andromeda, and Andromeda is the galaxy that these Nordics come from, and he couldn't even answer that correctly. And there was, my memory escapes me, but there was a few incidents what he was coming out with that just didn't add up to what he was actually saying. And it's very interesting because, as I say, the kind of like, there's also environmental warning from these ETs as well. There's kind of like environmental and nuclear warnings from them, which are quite serious. And that during the 1970s and 50s and 60s, there were people like Billy Meyer, George Van Tassel, I think, a few others, who were classed as contactees. In fact, the FBI actually monitored them because they claimed contact with aliens. So I suppose you could say, Cameron, that I'm like the modern version of that. But it's a lot more brutal, and it's a lot more mentally taxing. And you're pushed from pillar to post, and you've no idea what the agendas are, and you've no idea if they're friend from foe. All you know is that they're here, they're real, and they're interacting with you.
There's a video that went viral on, I think it was Facebook, maybe YouTube. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it was, I don't know, a member of the FBI or whatever interviewing some actual alien, and this alien was talking about, like what you've just been talking about, really, or the nuclear sort of problems and environmental problems, and what's going to happen to humans, and I thought it was fake, but what's your insight on that?
On that particular interview?
I mean, yeah, they literally sat there interviewing this obvious looking alien that's not us. So what is that about? Or is that just complete sort of fake news?
I would suggest so. I would suggest that real communication with extraterrestrials happens in non-locality. It happens across time and space, where scientific information is exchanged with a government agency, the like of which the world had ever seen, and that would be kept quiet. It would be kept classified, and they wouldn't release it. In fact, if they had contact with extraterrestrials now, which they probably have done, they are signalling. I strongly believe that for example, the US military is being signalled to, the British military is being signalled to by them, and it is ultra covert. It's ultra secret. They don't want people knowing. For whatever reason that might be, they just don't want people knowing that. But one of the reasons would be because the technology they're using, these ETs, is very advanced.
So just for people listening, non-locality, we're talking, so we're here in Southport now, in a place that locality.
Yes.
Non-locality would be now my subconscious mind, which we can't see, we can't measure, we can't empirically of measure. It's just everywhere.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's absolutely correct.
So you're almost saying that the outside world is almost like a big mind.
Yes, that's right.
Like a mind map.
It's very much
of consciousness.
That's
over what,
absolutely
millennia?
Correct. Yes, over
because that's fucking confusing.
It is. It's like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a system of signalling at a different level. So our conscious mind, where we are now, is probably the tip of the iceberg, and then as we go deeper, we discover. I tell you what it's like. It's like the non-locality is like the psychic dark web. So you've got, if you look at these New Age books, you've got astral projection. You've got projecting into the astral. You've got, do you get me drift anyway? The astral
I get
stuff.
you drift.
Yeah.
Does that sort of relate to, what's your views on DMT and acid and, I know they do the ayahuasca, is it, in the forests of the Amazon?
Yes. Personally, I personally don't take this stuff. I believe that through a process of meditation, I don't take drugs, but as a process of meditation, you can awaken yourself to these other. Actually, as the Russians would say,
are these psychedelic drugs to sort of non-localize your consciousness?
I don't know. I don't need to. if you look at some of the Russian stuff, the Russian, for example, the remote viewing techniques of the Russians was designed that the brain is actually a resonant tuning instrument. It can tune to different wavelengths. The ancient traditions of the Toltec.
Is that what you call the third eye or the pineal gland?
Yeah, it's more the subconscious information management process, and it's more kind of that can open. Yeah, the third eye can actually open. But I would suggest that the subconscious and the navigation of it and what it can pick up is a very powerful tool, as the superpowers discovered during their psychic warfare programs. You know, they were used. The American remote viewing program was based on signal from noise, separating conscious noise from subconscious signal to decode, we will say, psychic information, if you will, and it worked very, very effectively. Even on one of the remote viewing courses I do, I give classes on it. I'm not a remote viewer, but I do like to give classes on it. It's a good evening for people, and they find that it works. The system that the Americans developed actually works because it's a subconscious. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a subconscious information processing management system, what goes on, and it can go beyond time and space, and that hence the communication with ET, hence the Russians communicating with them in the way that they did.
How far are people willing to go? Does it have to be proven? I guess this is what you've been saying. It can't be proven physically because it's non-local. So how far do you go with this?
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, for me, if you look at my UFO footage, you will discover that there's UFOs performing manoeuvres that an aircraft could not do. And that's all image analysis. So we don't just put something up online. I have somebody who runs image analysis. Sometimes it's an aircraft, sometimes it's a satellite, but in 9 times out of 10 cases, it's a UFO. We've had them coming in over Southport here, for example, with just a white light, no strobe sequence, silent running, definitely a UFO. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's alien, but we've also had for 5 seconds over the Marine Lake a triangle with 3 pink lights come over. 5 seconds of it, just 5 seconds. I couldn't get it quick enough on camera, and then it went. It wasn't hanging around. Now I'm currently waiting for something to fly in over the Marine Lake, and I'm meant to film it. I've seen visions of it, and I'm meant to film it. That hasn't happened yet, but I'll just say that with me, my camera won't lie when that happens. So I'm literally in this unique position where I'm expecting them, but they've not turned up yet. And when they turn up, I will film them, and everybody can look at the footage and make an informed choice.
So just going back, because from what I've gathered, people who don't believe in conspiracy, let's not say conspiracies, let's just say UFOs and UFO encounters and aliens.
Yeah.
Is it because of the misinformation through conspiracies that says these are physical outside objects? Whereas you're saying it's more inside, it's more mind,
it's a combination of the two.
Yeah,
it's a combination of the two. It's a combination of the two, and the fact of, and it's also artificial intelligence. For example,
yeah. What is that thing with? I mean, I know Elon Musk is. He's big on.
Yeah, he's big on artificial intelligence.
So is AI got anything to do with UFOs?
Well, I'll tell you a story about all that, because I recently sent off something to the Wachowski brothers.
Who are those guys?
The Wachowski sisters, who were directors of The Matrix. They directed all 3 Matrix films.
Right, okay.
And I sent something off to them to do with this very subject of artificial intelligence, because there's some striking things that go on in The Matrix that I can compare with. I gave a lecture at a conference, Cameron, in Watford, and I thought it very odd. We'll cut a long story short, that there was a lot of German speakers there, and I thought that's very odd. That's just out of place. Over the years, when you've been under surveillance and been watched, and I'm not being paranoid, it has happened, you get an instinct for if you're being watched. And then about 4 days later, the phone rings, which is quite darkly comical. German guy on the end of it. Identifies himself as Klaus. I've no idea how he's got my number. He says that he is part of the German Defence Intelligence for Defence of the Constitution. He wanted to chat to me about my UFO experiences. He was especially interested in the bits that I didn't talk about. So I more or less said to him, if you think that I'm going to talk to you about the bits I don't talk about, then you've got another thing coming. And then he said, well, it's the Cold War. The Cold War is over, Mr. Topping. We're all friends now. And I said, no, we're not friends. I don't know who you are, and I'm telling you nothing. And he wanted to know about artificially intelligent UFOs and what I knew about them. because there's advances in that area, and that's where it probably gets very, very Matrix. Because an experience that happened to me, I'll call it an experience, in the process of dealing with these UFOs, is that these triangles that fly over are not from round here. And there's this information campaign that says, oh yes, they're classified aircraft, they're flying over. Well, the Ministry of Defence has classified flying zones. It doesn't fly classified aircraft over classified areas. Sorry, overpopulated areas. So we know that for a fact. But in the incident that I had in the process of contact with UFOs, this UFO in particular was artificially intelligent. It had its own mind. A long story short, but the occupants of the ship referred to it as their beloved ship because it had its own mind. And it was like something out of the Matrix, where this ship that was artificially intelligent was wanting to know, questing, thirsting to understand what it was like to be spiritual and linked to the cosmos, because it couldn't do it. It couldn't do it. It couldn't get its head, its artificially intelligent head around spirituality. It desired it, it wanted to understand, it wanted to know. It was the most bizarre incident in all the years that I have had. And that's why he was on the phone. He was wanting to know about it, because artificial intelligence is where humanity's going. When you think about the European Space Agency, they're barely, for example, developed.
Why is that? Why are the human species sort of wanting to head towards a more AI world?
Well, this is a very good question, and the answer to that is a tricky one, frankly, because it could be biblical. It could be
because are we starting on mobile phones? Are we classing that as AI?
Well, it's a form of AI, isn't it? It is, I suppose, a mobile phone is a form of artificial intelligence. But when you get advanced civilizations that are out there who have developed their artificial intelligence to levels beyond humanity, then that's going to be of interest to some player somewhere who's going to want to know all about it, if you get me drift. Excuse me, may I just take a drink?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that is, so the incident that happened to me, excuse me, was definitely an incident that involved one of these type of UFOs that's triangular with 3 pink lights on it, for example, and it had its own mind. So the ship is artificially intelligent, and during that incident, I knew for a fact that this ship was plugging into me because it wanted to understand spirituality and the cosmic realm. There is therefore this thing whereby you have a machine that desires to know the universe, physically like humans would. And what does it do? It designs a universe to understand the universe. I think that's a very think-out-of-the-box concept. It came to me when I was dealing with all this.
Are you saying that a machine has created a universe?
There's a possible. It's a possible. In 40 years of dealing with this and dealing with UFOs, there is a distinct possibility that some sort of artificially intelligent machine may have created the universe to understand. That's non-local. To understand what the universe was all about. There's a possible. It's just a think-out-the-box theory, and I could be completely wrong.
Right.
But from what I've witnessed from this UFO, it had its own mind. It had its own intelligence, and it was quite an experience. It was a machine. But it wasn't. It was very friendly. It was a machine voice. It was very friendly. It belonged to the blonde, blue-haired ETs. And I'm only relaying the experience. That's all I'm saying. I'm sat on the fence as to is it? I know it happened. But this was just one example of one of the artificial intelligent experiences that I had, and provoked this guy on the phone to ring me about it. I mean, he was on this phone to me, and he was in a clear panic, and he was pressing me about artificially intelligent UFOs and what I knew about them, which was all a bit bizarre, frankly, because he said that his office was above a cafe in Frankfurt. Now, if you're a super secret spy, Cameron, you've probably got more cover. I'd actually suspect you of being a super secret spy because you've walked in here and you're just the innocent podcast guy, but there again, you could be a spy.
I could be. I'm not.
You're not, of course not. But that's. Do you get me drift?
I get your drift. I know. But isn't that sort of a downfall of being sort of really involved in these these sort of things? It's you get very sort of conscious and cautious about what you do, and is that sort of a steering away from the peace of mind that we all sort of desire?
There is no peace on this path, mate. The path I follow has no peace. The only peace.
And is that by choice?
That's a very good question. You do ask some very good questions. Is that by choice? Do you know? I don't know whether I can answer that. Is that by choice? I think it might be at some level, yes.
Right.
But I have found in the power of prayer, I found my solace. I found my peace in the power of
So
prayer.
who do you pray to? Who
Well,
do you pray to? Sorry.
yes, the divine cosmos, the divine Christ within. It gets you through because obviously you're linking to a divine mind, and it's complex. It's incredibly complex, but basically you are linking into a divine mind that is active in the subconscious realm as it is active in the conscious realm, and your prayers can affect the quantum field and influence things, and it's a good thing to pray. Definitely so.
I mean, I love meditation. I really do.
Yeah.
Praying, I think everyone prays in their life. Oh,
Yes.
I hope they're okay. I hope these are okay.
Yeah.
I send my regards. I send stuff. But how much of that do you have to sort of take responsibility for yourself? So, say for example, you're praying for something to happen in your life.
Yes.
How much does something come from another place within, and then you act on it?
Something comes from another place within. No, something comes from another place within, and you're acting on it. For example, if you look at the study of neurophysiology, where you have brain surgeons studying the power of prayer at a surgical level on the brain, at a medical level on the brain, they would say that they're not sure where the brain is firing up from, but it's some sort of realm is triggering it off, and there's something going on that's very curious.
It seems to me that science has flatlined spirituality. It's flatlined our behaviour. You can't put a lump of happiness in my hand now and sort of measure it.
No.
So in a way, the objective has flatlined the invisible.
Yes. Yeah, but you do have constant. But if you look at the media very carefully, you will see that there are physicists who are making inroads by saying that, for example, at the point of departure, when our soul departs the body, we move to another realm. And not only that, they've worked it out neurologically as well, that is the process that is going on. When my mother departed, bless her, I would often hear her coming through. When she departed, I would hear it. I would hear a voice distinctively coming through and speaking to me, telling me that she was all right, and that she was in a better place, which if you're using subconscious non-locality and all that kind of thing, yes, highly relevant, highly possible that could happen. The question is, what is the quantum physics to modulate her signal to me? What part of the brain am I using to hear her? What part of her brain in another realm is she using to hear me? The quantum physics of it are so incredibly complex for that interaction to happen.
Does it, and that's the question, I guess, does it have to be reduced to science or some sort of monological, analytic sort of viewpoint?
Yes, yeah, it's more spiritual, isn't it? I think humanity is governed by spiritual forces more so than we would care to think of.
Look around, we're on a floating planet, we're on a floating. To me, it's spiritual.
Of course,
it's phenomenal.
It's divine consciousness, and it is phenomenal, and that's the thing. And we are losing sight of that very rapidly as a human race. We're losing sight of the fact of who we are and the nature of spirituality, most definitely.
So do you see it just continuing and rolling on how it is for many more years to come, or is there a point of where we've started to, we have to integrate, 4 quadrants of how the human consciousness sort of manifests?
Yes, I think we have to integrate the points of how the human consciousness manifests. What they're doing at the moment is the bizarre thing of machine intelligence trying to take us over, and that's very nefarious and sinister. And these extraterrestrials that I've come across are continually warning humanity. You have in the US media a narrative with the UFOs that's a threat narrative. The threat, a threat, threat everywhere. But they're not saying the other bit, which is about the fact that some of these ETs are conscious, deeply spiritual Star Nation beings that the Indian elders even talked of, that the Zulu Nation talk of, that they are out there, they're very real, they're very spiritual. Some of the female ETs are just absolutely gorgeous, and they don't look human, but they just have this beautiful femininity about them, which is quite gobsmacking, actually.
Is this sort of within a dream state?
Yes, it is. It is within a dream state, but believe me, when they're saying that, when they're coming in a dream state and saying we're going to be here, we're going to be there, film us here, film us there, you kind of, or events happen that they predict, you realise that you're not in a dream state. Things that happen with them, and things have happened with them, and things still are happening with them, and quite laughable. But one of the things I'd like is for one of them to walk through that front door and sit down and talk like we're doing. That's what I want to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's
That's
be
the ultimate,
probably one of the only ways that people would believe it, right?
That's right.
Or a lot of people would believe
that's absolutely. And what is very bizarre is that I've had repeated visions of one of these beings approaching me disguised as a human and turning up here to talk. Which
what do you mean disguised as
a human? So, for example, you know what they look like when they're aliens. This sounds absolutely bonkers, doesn't it? But you know what they look like when they're not human. They're distinctive. If you were dreaming, Cameron,
is
and
that the whole shape-shifting
no, I wouldn't say shape-shifting. I don't know how they would do it, actually, frankly. That the narrative's wandering off into into comedy zone, but basically comedy it is, darkly comical it is, and if you saw one of them, you would know about it. If you actually saw one of these ETs, you would go, "My God, you're real," but everybody says that you're not, but you're real, and they would go, "Yes, we are real," and you'd say, "And you're in your UFO," and they would go, "Yes, we are flying over," and what it is, it's this astounding paradigm of they're not real, they don't exist, versus them turning up and going, "Hello, we're here, we're real." And it kind of like shocks the mind. You just are not prepared for it until they start turning up on a regular basis, and then that's absolutely staggering. Yeah, staggering it is.
And so what happens then when they all rock up to Earth and start walking around in like clothes and?
I've not a clue, mate. Frankly, Cameron, I've not a clue.
How do you even distinguish?
Well, I think I think, frankly, that the narrative is wandering off into comedy land, which we don't want. Because believe me, I could go into comedy zone with this very easily and have the place in uproar with laughter, because I'm my own harshest critique. But basically, what it is the question is why would they do that? Why are they here? And that's, as a contact experiencer, that constantly eludes you. What is the agenda they're working to? Why are they flying over in the UFOs like they are? The exhaustion issue with me when I was mysteriously cured of exhaustion by them was real. I was in that bed at 2 o'clock fast asleep, and I saw what she looked like. Beautiful green, emerald-looking ET who came in and more or less indicated that she was going to assist me. Would she mind if she helped me, cured me of the exhaustion? And then a few weeks later, there was an emerald green UFO that came right over the rooftops and hovered. My mate was a witness with me. Hovered, flew left, flew right, and then flew off at speed. And I believe it to be her in her craft. And it was emerald green for a purpose. It was this beautiful green colour for a purpose to indicate that it was indeed her. If you look in Peru, India, you will find people in Peru and India having liaison with them quite routinely, but there's this unwritten law that you're not allowed to, Cameron, you see. That's the issue. That's the unwritten thing.
Well, I know the ancients had a lot of wisdom, and they looked a lot of at astrology and off-planet sort of stuff.
They did.
Where did that sort of change? Why now in sort of modern era is it such a I can't find the word. I guess it's volatile, like a volatile subject.
Yes, because that's where it goes biblical. That you're talking then the battle between light and dark within human affairs then. So you're talking kind of like this agency that I was talking about, the Collins elite. They nailed down as to why their jets were getting shot out the sky. They were very clever people. They nailed it down to a cult ritual. So they nailed it down to some kind of occultish thing going on that was triggering some kind of interaction with some of these UFOs, not all of them, but they were quite adamant that this situation that they were faced with was as esoteric. It was hidden. You only need to see some of the esoteric symbolism in the media and in the pop industry at the moment that would indicate that there is a battle between light and dark going on. There most definitely is, where the human spirit is oppressed till it becomes artificially intelligent. That's probably, there's a battle going on between light and dark that's quite beyond my comprehension.
When you're saying light and dark, are we talking about human morality?
No, we're talking good and evil. So,
is that
indeed,
installed
human morality
within our consciousness?
Yes, indeed. Human consciousness is somewhat manipulated and controlled. How the hell else do you think that we had 2 world wars? They weren't just a coincidence. They weren't just good against bad. They were carefully manipulated, engineered events to control consciousness. So the battle is about humanity's transcendence.
When you say control consciousness, do you mean like install fear into the average person?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, all that kind of thing. It's
why though? And this is the point.
This is the point. Why? You see, in the Matrix, there's a very fine example in the Matrix of Agent Smith talking to Neo, and Agent Smith turning around and saying, "I want out. I've had enough. I can't stand the smell of the place. I want to be like you because I've had enough of all this Agent Smith malarkey. I want out." And that's a similar scenario that's being played out between light and dark, between good and evil. At some point, even evil tires of itself. But I have to be very, very careful what I say about all that. We're going into realms now that I'd rather not discuss, frankly, because I have been to hell and back with all this, and there's elements of it that disturb me to talk about, and I'll just back off from that. But basically, yeah. So it's kind of like there's quite a battle going on, and with back to the UFO phenomenon, I think in some cases it's more like the film The Abyss, that very famous film that James Cameron did, where they're using our ocean bases as well. They are out there in our oceans coming in, and the incidents have been quite amazing with them, I have to say, quite amazing with them. So the thing is, Cameron, is that when I film.
Is that why you think we've not explored like 70% of the ocean? Maybe?
Yeah, the oceans are occupied by them, definitely, which is why the US Navy recently said that they've got UFOs on camera, but they didn't know what they were. They do know. As does our Ministry of Defence knows. Nick Pope gave an interview to Newsnight in about 96. He'd been a recently retired civil servant. He said to Jon Snow that these UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin. That interview has been buried. You can't get that interview anyway. It's a bit of it on YouTube, but Nick will never comment on it publicly, what he said. But he did say that. He said UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin. The head of the Belgian Air Force, when he was scrambling his F-16s to intercept triangles over Belgium in the 1990s, publicly stated he believed these UFOs were not from round here, based on an intelligence and technology that was extraterrestrial and quite beyond his Air Force's capability to keep up with them. And this is what goes on. This is what. It's absolutely unbelievable, the incidents that have happened with them.
Wow, you're gonna have to get a cup of tea after this.
Yeah,
relax.
But the incidents that's happened with them, and you see, as a contact experiencer, you don't know how long your life expectancy is going to be with all this. Because believe me, it's stressful, like in ways that people could not comprehend.
So, I mean, what's your goal in this life? What?
Well, I think my goal would be to write a book, to do a couple of TV documentaries, and to walk away from it all with some money in the bank and adopt a family and retire from it all and leave them all to it.
So there is going to be a point where you don't want to talk about this anymore.
There will be a point where I may say, nope, sorry, I can't talk about it anymore.
Now, is that for health or personal reasons?
It would be for health. For example, I'm nearly 50 now. I know you've said I don't look it, Cameron, but I'm
plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Right. But I'm nearly 50 now. I'm exposed to all kinds of medical problems that might have neurological problems, especially. I've got to be very careful with it. So there'll come a limit with all this. And at the moment, I want to do a film. I want to write my book, and then we may consider backing all off from it. Because I have been, Cameron, to the gates of hell and back with this.
So are you admitting that it is a potential 50-50 dodgy road to go down?
I'll tell you what it is, mate. I'll put it in an esoteric way. Dodgy is not the word. I think the word is more the path of high adventure and the path of low adventure. There are those in the Toltec tradition. I'll quote this again. There's something called the Toltec tradition, not to be confused with the work of Carlos Castaneda, who was also a Toltec, but there's a different version of it, a different version of the Toltec tradition under an South African tutor called Tion Maris. He came out with an interesting analogy, which was this. There is the path of low adventure and the path of high adventure. If you're in the path of high adventure, you're going to have all these fantastic experiences, but you're not spiritually going to have a clue what's going on around you. And if you forget spirituality and who you are, you're going to get into a lot of spiritual trouble with yourself. The ancient Indian texts state this very clearly, that it must be of a spiritual practice, that you must need to practice a spiritual path. It doesn't matter about the UFOs and all the connotations about them. If you don't do that, you're going to be in trouble.
And that's just basically going down to being more conscious of your thoughts, what you say, how you act.
You've got it, pal. Every minute, every hour. You've absolutely got it, and that's what it actually boils down to. In fact, in the Star Wars movie, you've got Master Yoda just sat there stirring his cooking pot all that power
So it's the
available.
observer, watching the mind.
You're absolutely correct.
Because I guess I'm really into that sort of stuff. I watch Urquhart Tolle, and he talks a lot about the present moment and just sort of just being that awareness of your body, of your mind, of what's going on.
Yes, that's right.
Because then you can act from a place that's much more sort of conscious.
Yes, you can. You can act from a place which is much more conscious. And if you have, I think if you have certain abilities or certain perceptions that are heightened, you've got to be careful at all times about what you do and what you think. You've got to be careful. It's quite a discipline, really is.
I mean, because it's easy to get attached to a belief, and it's easy to become passionate about a belief, but how much of that is a distraction from the spiritual path that you're talking about?
This is absolutely correct. And it's something that you've got to be aware of at all times. The Christian faith would call it the enemy. I would just say that you've got to be aligned with divine service in the cosmos. You've got to be aligned with the Almighty at all times. Even some of the more ancient texts would say that. Even as I say, the Toltec tradition does indicate that for example, with my experiences, this will be a fine example of the path of high adventure. The fact that I'd forgotten who I am, the fact that I'd forgotten spirituality, could send me helter-skelter on my spiritual path, as it were. And it does.
And you experienced that through going into the UFOs, or
no, the UFOs have been a guide. Some of the UFOs and the interactions I've had with them have been a guide,
right?
Have been a yardstick as to what is going on behind the scenes. And you have opposing alien groups. You have quite a Cold War going on out there among them, like Russia versus America. In the days of the Cold War, I don't know whether you wouldn't have been around then, but in the days of the Cold War, it was Russia versus America. It's kind of like the same thing with ET. There's an alien Cold War out there. I've written an article on my website about it, where there is an alien Cold War. I do believe, definitely so. Yeah, there is.
And so what platforms do you have on the internet that people can sort of go and have a look at what you do?
Okay, you can visit my website, which is tonytoppingufos.com. You can go on my Facebook page, because you can't miss me on there, and just watch out for my articles and all that I say and do with my radio interviews and film and TV stuff. It's a tough business, it's a tough gig. It's not for the faint-hearted.
But you seem to be sort of, shining a light on it. I mean, you're getting around.
That's the idea. It's designed to be an information-type D-Day. It's designed to run differently to a narrative that's being played out in the media. It's designed to just run slightly differently to what people are being told. For example, as I've often said, the heads of our armed services, intelligence agencies, Air Force, they need to know fully what's going on. They shouldn't be able to pick up the phone and not know. They have a right to know, as does the public have a right to know what is going on. And it would be failing in my public duty not to do this, especially after what's happened with me, Cameron, when I was targeted and stalked, and that was not pleasant. So yes, it's been quite a shocking journey, and having to deal with my mother in the way that I did when I became a carer for her was quite absolutely unbelievable. What happened there, and it really sorts there's one thing, my life really sorts the men from the boys. It most certainly does, so that's the situation with it so far, really, and I'm expecting to film something on camera, definitely expecting it, something spectacular.
Is this like a projection, a bit like a future goal?
It's a future, it's a vision. It's actually a vision as to it's kind of like the liaison with the UFOs is a very complex one. I'm not sure why it's happening, but I've had the vision of what direction of travel they're coming in, where they're coming in. It's a question of when. That's the question. So I definitely know that I'm going to film something, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen. The question behind that then is, why don't they tell me? And I've no idea. But I definitely think that I'm going to film something. So Cameron, you'll be the first to know if I do film what I'm going to film. For example, in the 1990s, in 1999, I had visions repeatedly of a UFO coming in to illuminate the TV antenna of one of the houses, and it did. It came in, and I filmed it exactly as I saw in the vision that I had of the UFO coming in and illuminating a TV antenna and flying off again. That went for image analysis, and the guy who did that indicated that it was indeed a UFO. Most definitely a UFO, and was not a helicopter or anything like that. So you see, it's their presence in the skies must be for a reason. They are around, they're here, they're making their presence felt, And aliens v aliens, sometimes aliens don't get on with each other as much as humans don't get on with each other. It's not all fluffy and spiritually out there with them. They are like people, like us. And it's quite a sight to behold when you do see them. It certainly is.
Wow. That's a hell... I mean, I don't even know what we've spoken about.
No, well, we've spoken about targeting, and then we spoke about the ETs. We spoke about mental exhaustion, and now I was mysteriously cured by them. And that's not the first time that they've intervened. There was a time, it's in the public domain, where I was actually the first time that they'd been coming in over the house for ages, and I'd been filmed by unmarked helicopters, and I've had all sorts of crazy stuff happen, including being stalked by strange people who I believe are the equivalent of Dr. Strangelove or some sort of goon squad agency. They were following me and all. That was very bizarre.
When you've gone on to BBC and ITV and all these government sort of funded television programs, are they usually seem to me like they mock people who come on and talk about spiritual stuff.
Yes, well, they do, but when you're a high-ranking kind of like secret agent like I am, in charge of his own UFO agency, they leave well alone, Cameron, frankly.
Right, okay. So you've never been sort of challenged on big shows like that?
No. They put it this way, on a serious note, I'm being humorous, Cameron, but on a serious note, if I was challenged, A, I really don't give a shit. B, the person who challenged me would be scalped. I mean, the reaction from me is ferocious. Right. I have a policy. Anybody on Facebook, anybody comes my way, they're just met with a ferocity like no other. And then they go, well, why are you getting shirty? Well, I think after what I've been through, I have every reason to get shirty. And I have zero tolerance for people who will be... What it's about, what irritates me is this. I'll only get irritated if I'm not learning something from them. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd like to know...
do you accept... where people are at.
Totally.
Consciously, maybe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm all ears. I'm all ears to what it might be as opposed to what I think it is.
Yeah.
I keep an open mind. But when somebody is showing disrespect, when somebody is showing snideness, when somebody is chortling at you to your face, then prepare for trouble. I will not tolerate it. I will sit and listen to any scientist or anybody who has an opposite thing and says, well, it's this, this, and this. I'm open-minded. But it's all about respect. That's what it's about, Cameron.
Yeah. I certainly say that my belief is more important than yours or more valid than yours.
Yes, or if as has happened on a radio show where somebody's tried to make a complete buffoon out of me and I've walked off the radio show, I will not tolerate it. I will just not tolerate a lack of disrespect. I just won't tolerate it after what I've been through. So
I think that's one of the beauties of this planet. It's that everyone is so diverse.
Yes, they are.
Everyone has their own life path to sort of unfold. And
that's right.
You know, how do we start to integrate acceptance into that?
Well, this is absolutely right, and I think if you look at some of the contact experiences out there, like Dr. Stephen Greer and a few others, I recommend his work. It is absolutely an understanding that we are gearing up, perhaps, to take our place in the cosmos. That we are gearing up to be part of this great universe. You see, this universe is teeming with life, but they've kept it quiet. And the question is, why have they kept it quiet? And that's the agenda that we're unsure of. Why have they kept it quiet? Why are they currently keeping quiet that we're not alone in the universe? They're keeping it very hush indeed. When you hear some of these guys like Tom DeLonge's merry band, Luis Elizondo, standing up and talking about UFOs but not actually telling you anything, that can be quite irritating. There's quite a few of them out there who can stand up and talk for nearly an hour and say nothing.
So do you think there's people who represent the UFO industry who are actually or sort of telling misinformation?
They're on narrative. They're following a set psychological operational narrative.
Right.
And what you've got going on at the moment is you've got incidents happening where an opposing group steps out of that narrative and does its own thing and starts giving information that is separate from the narrative that we see. The Times, for example, the New York Times, that's big on UFOs, towards me, the silence is deafening from them. They don't want me anywhere near. They don't want contact experience because they may think we're crazy initially, but there's also, I do believe, an agenda, and some of us that are out there don't match the narrative. My narrative is different from the media spun narrative that we see, for example, at the moment. Yeah. It certainly is, and the silence can be deafening. But there again, in terms of the British media, I've been treated very well. There's never been an issue really with the British media. I've been very good. They've been very good. British media has been very good to me. Yeah, definitely so.
It's interesting because, I mean, we're sat in Southport now, but you have literally been all over the world.
Yeah.
Quite high up as well.
Yeah.
And you seem to know too much.
There's information management involved. You have to be very careful with the information you're coming out with. I know a lot. But I know a lot as well that could have impact. So you've got to be very sensible about it. There's bits I can't talk about. I won't talk about for my own safety, really. I know a lot. Do I know too much? Yes, probably. But it's not because I know it all. It's because of I'm an ordinary man who stumbled into this blasted circus of UFOs, people following me, unmarked helicopters. Frankly, Cameron, I get quite pissed off with it. You know, I can get quite pissed off with it.
Why you? Why do you think this doesn't sort of regularly occur to I don't know, on average 7 out of 10 people? Or something?
I don't know. And the answer to that question is I don't know. It might be actually happening more than we think with people, and there's a situation going on where there's a distinct possibility that we are indeed. What's the word I'm looking for, Cameron?
I guess people can have spiritual experiences at a very high level, but then they are still resting at a lower conscious awareness.
Yes, that's right.
So they can't comprehend it.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
With enough clarity.
Yes.
And so the information almost gets misinterpreted.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Because we don't know what to believe.
No, we really don't.
I mean, there's so much information. There's yes, it is. No, it's not. Well, maybe. Yeah. And it's. Where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there? So,
and that's why I like that whole sort of, just being present. Yeah. Don't attach to belief. No. Don't attain. Don't try to gain.
This is true.
You don't lose. It's just all experience.
Yes, that's right.
Present moment. Almost.
That's absolutely right. You have to be in a point of what's the word I'm looking for? A point of cosmic consciousness, perhaps. A point of understanding with the Almighty at all times. Because it's a very dark world that we're living in. But the behaviour of those behind the UFOs is one of drip, 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 information, drip, drip, drip. They're not exactly telling the full story of why they're here. They're not exactly clear on it, but they're there. And they've intervened, as I say, on a couple of occasions with me. But I still don't know why.
It's almost like who is winning here? Is it people who live a normal life and just go to work and don't worry about any of this stuff?
They're winning.
The comedy show, like you say, it's comedy to them.
It's pure,
it's a laugh. It's sci-fi. It's fake believe. Who is winning?
It's a good question, Cameron, and I don't know the answer to that one. I know that it's been very tough for quite a few of us out here who are contactees and are having to deal with all this. It's a very tough business that we're in. It sorts the men from the boys, and I'm not sure the direction of currently where it's all going in. I'm not sure. I'm told certain information by these people in the UFOs that things will develop. I am waiting to get something on film because that's what I need. I need something so that people will go, my God, have you seen that? That's not an aircraft, really in your face. And that's what we're gearing up for, I do believe, where we've got this in your face kind of UFO footage, definitely so.
That's great. Some part of me thinks that that's not enough for people.
It won't be, no.
I think they need this big-headed, guy turning up to the house.
Yes, I agree.
Going, yo.
Yeah, well, that's what I agree with you totally. That's what I want. I want them to walk through this door, sit on that sofa, and explain who they are and what the hell's going on. I want them to come round. I want to take a selfie with them. Oh my God, I do, because they've been flying around for blasted long enough around me. You know what I'm saying? I want all that to happen. I really do, because it will be a way of authenticating things, because you've got to be your own critique. You just got to watch and report like a journalist as to what is going on around you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's fascinating because you speak so passionately about it.
Yeah.
And you speak from a place of like, no shit, dude. This is actually happening.
It has happened.
This has happened.
Absolutely.
To me.
And I will go to the grave with my head held high, knowing that it has happened, because it has. And I don't embellish and I don't lie.
And this is why I love talking to so many different people, because you get to sort of, assimilate another person's consciousness.
Yes.
And it's so interesting to see the diversity of people.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is so interesting to see the diversity of people and the hell that they've been through to get to where they're going. And none of it, as I say, none of it is easy. I mean, interactions can happen at random. I mean, I could go to sleep tonight and have another interaction with them. I think the last interaction was 2-3 weeks ago, where they came in, and by bizarre coincidence, they're very quiet with the filming at the moment. They've gone quiet. I don't know when I'm going to film them next, but I'm hoping when I do film them, we can make it count. We can deliver some excellent UFO footage that leaves me and others in no doubt as to what I film. That's what I'm gearing up for, Cameron. It's important, very important indeed.
How would you simplify it to someone who really doesn't understand what you're going on about?
We're not alone in the universe, and you can speak to those people in the universe very easily.
Perfect.
Against all the limitations society says. End of. No. It's more simple to speak to them than you would think. In fact, sometimes it's more simple to speak to them than to contact some of my friends on Facebook.
I love that. I think we should end that.
Yeah, you want to end it there? Yeah. It is, mate.
I mean, we could talk all night about this.
Yeah, but we can do a part. Come back maybe in a few weeks' time or whatever, and do another session, do another part 2 with me.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, where we'd have more things to report.
I think you're really interesting.
Yeah, because by that time,
I mean, it's hard off the hook to sort of cover everything, but I think there's been a lot there.
There is, and you've got also as well. I direct people to a very interesting YouTube film that I've done called The Majestic Directive, which is on my YouTube channel, and I'll put it up on my Facebook page, and people can. It's more in depth actually, alien contact, all that kind of thing. It's like a small film. It's like a 30-minute film of what I've been through, a bit more deeper. Yeah, deep. Yeah. So there you go.
Awesome. Honestly, thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem. You can come back again and we can report to the listeners what's been going on, because there are developments in film and TV at the moment, which I'm very proud of. So we'll see where we go with all that.
I look forward to it.
All right, pal.